Hi, welcome back to the Lil Will Learning Company. We're going to be looking at a novel today. That novel is Hatchet by Gary Paulsen. And it's a novel that's been used for many, many years for either fifth, sixth grade, middle school students. And it's a story about survival. Now, the story revolves around a young teenage boy named Brian Robeson. And he's flying out to the Canadian wilderness to basically spend the summer with his father. And he's from New York. He's a city boy and he lives with his mother there. And so going out to the Canadian wilderness is something very brand new to him. It's something he hasn't really experienced before. And before the flight out there, his mother gets him some stuff to prepare for this, summer trip. One of those things is a hatchet, basically like a small little one-hand axe, essentially. And the plane that Brian is flying in is like a small plane. It's basically just the pilot and him. There's really no one else. And what ends up happening is I'm kind of ruining some of the story here, but the pilot of the plane has a heart attack and dies mid-flight. And Brian, he's only 13 years old. He has no idea how to fly a plane. He has no idea how to operate the communications system properly and communicate where he's heading, what he's doing, and so on and so forth. He has this severe moment of panic in the middle, of the Canadian wilderness, up in a plane. Eventually, the plane runs out of fuel and it crashes. Brian does survive the crash. The pilot does not. The pilot died basically during the heart attack. Now, I set all that up within, that's really the first 1 to 2 chapters of the book where all this happens. Now he's crashed and he's in the Canadian wilderness, and no one really knows where to find him because he kind of made the plane go off course, and so it didn't follow the exact path that it was supposed to before they had taken off. As you can imagine, he does have this kind of moment of panic, and he's thinking, how do I survive this? What do I do? He's not someone who is used to being in the wilderness during this time, and so all this is brand new to him. And I want to read 2 quick excerpts about it, and these excerpts kind of describe where Brian is at and how he learns to deal with this. So, the first one is this. Brian had once had an English teacher, a guy named Perpich, who was always talking about being positive, thinking positive, staying on top of things. That's how Perpich had put it. Stay positive and stay on top of things. Brian thought of him now, wondered how to stay positive and stay on top of this. All Perpich would say is that I have to get motivated. He was always telling kids to get motivated. Now, that part he's reflecting on with the teacher about staying positive, of course, all of us can kind of say, well, that's easier said than done. And that's true. But when you deal with these really difficult situations, and hopefully none of us are stranded in the wilderness and have to basically survive all on our own. But it's easy to let all the negative thoughts creep in no matter what. It's even easy to let all the negative thoughts creep in even when things are honestly good and going well for us. But his point here is that you got to stay positive, because that could be the difference in his case between life and death. It could be the difference between surviving and never being found. He has to stay positive. And as he thinks about the quote from his old teacher, he then takes basically account of all the things he does have, like a watch, his hatchet, and all these things like that. And it leads to another kind of quote later on within that same chapter where he says the following. No, wait, one other thing. These were all the things he had, but he also had himself. Perpich used to drum that into them. You are your most valuable asset. Don't forget that. You are the best thing you have. Now, as Brian is stranded in the wilderness during this time, he has to remember that he may not have all these various things. He's got a few tools here and there. The hatchet ends up becoming very, very useful to his survival. But most importantly, he has himself, his brain, his thinking, his experiences, his knowledge, and also that determination or that ability to stay positive in a really difficult situation. Hence, he is his own most valuable asset. Now, Hatchet's a wonderful novel, and I don't want to ruin the ending or anything for it, but that theme, that lesson that it's teaching is really important. Because ultimately, the book is not just about how to survive in the wilderness, it's a book about how can you rely on just yourself and how to survive. Meaning, Brian does not have much to survive in the Canadian wilderness, but he has himself, and he has a few tools that not the best in the world, but they're enough. They're enough to do some things. But ultimately, he does have himself. He has this ability he has to learn to rely upon himself, his knowledge, his determination, his ability to stay positive in this really, really difficult situation. And it's not even just about that relies upon yourself, there's a toughness that he develops through the novel. And it's not just the physical toughness, it's like the mental toughness or a mental resilience that he develops. And I think for any one of us who's ever played a sport of some kind, I think maybe you know what I'm talking about, or anything that demanded a lot of us, that when you do something that's difficult, there is a physical aspect to it that you have to overcome. But really, there's a mental aspect where you kind of have to stay positive and you have to kind of tell yourself, I can do this no matter how difficult it is. I can get through this no matter how much my legs are burning. Let's say in a situation with sports or like sports conditioning or surviving in the wild. That mental resilience is really important. And that always carries over for us in many other aspects in life because life gets difficult. And you can always think back and go, well, I was able to survive this. So why can't I survive this next challenge here? That mental resilience is really important. And by the end, Brian is a very different person. There's one phrase he uses. I didn't get the quote for it, and I didn't get the like a screenshot of it in the book. But at one point, he refers to himself as he used to be weak, and now he's stronger. He's mentally tougher. He's not the same weak person he was before. And I think there's a lot of truth to that in all of our own lives, that we do demand a toughness of us to be strong. And we need, or I should say, people in our lives rely upon us to be strong. We rely upon others who are strong, who can, do the job, carry the load, and carry through in these difficult situations. We respect strong people, not just physically, but mentally strong, emotionally strong. And that's Brian near the end, where he's not the same, as he puts it, weak person from before. He's much stronger physically, mentally, emotionally. And through the novel, it's not just the wilderness that attacks at him, it's his own inner demons, like the issues he deals with involving his parents, his home life, and he has to wrestle with those along with that of nature. It's a wonderful book. So the main thing to take away from this whole thing is that advice. Remember to stay positive in life. Again, I don't think any of us are watching this video and we're stuck in the Canadian wilderness, but whether it's sports, whether it's academics, whether it's just life itself, stay positive. Always look at the bright side of life, to quote the amazing Monty Python and The Life of Brian. What a wonderful song, too. But besides that as well, there is a part of life that demands that we be mentally tough, that we have mental resilience. And people rely upon us to be that way and to be a tough person in general, to be a strong person in general. So, hope everyone's doing well. Have a fantastic day. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.